believe Buffalo is going to win it, folks.
The Bills make it run. Kick your heels up and down.
Let's see why the Buffalo Bills are en route to the playoffs.
Come on now, the Bills are making it happen now. Stand up now, come on and shout. Yeah,
Buffalo Bills go undefeated. And we're going to the Super Bowl.
Right now, baby. Come on, come on.
No one
Come on
circles the
and
wagon
shout.
like the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
All right, we are live and we are back. Welcome to another episode of the Overdue Bills podcast. And we're truly excited today because we have another interview, another preview show. We told you earlier in the year, top of the year, that every week we're going to come with somebody from the opposing team just to kind of get a different perspective on the game, and we're excited. But before we do that, let me introduce my guy, Matt, a.k.a. All Black Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Glad to be here. Another pregame edition. I'm happy to talk some Bills football.
Absolutely. And you see, we definitely have a guest today. And we're excited that he's on the show. We really thank him for his time. And Blake, if you can you just let the people know just who you are and I guess where you come from? I guess by the title, I'm sure they know, but.
Yes, sir. I'm Blake Shoemaker. I live here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the eastern part of the state. Been a Titans fan since the late 90s when the team originally moved to Tennessee, and I had taken an interest in football living in Alabama at the time. Really good time to jump on board with the team. Those late 90s, early 2000s was a lot of fun, and have since relocated to the area. I actually work in a clinic here. The last 2 years have been quite interesting, to say the least, but those love of sports certainly kind of keeps you grounded on the weekends for sure.
Absolutely. Definitely been a, I guess, crazy year or crazy 2 years, so to speak. But we're definitely thankful for football. Definitely can take our minds off, you know what I'm saying, the crazy things that's going on in the world. Definitely prayers to everybody involved since that was brought up. But let's get into the show. But obviously, before we do that, we have to let you know who is our presenting sponsor. Please, Matt, let the people know.
Yes, sir. This podcast and this episode and every other episode is brought to you by none other than Buffalo Wing Kings. Being from Buffalo, there's two things that the guys here at OBP know. That's Bills football and that's wings. Our first choice and the best choice is Buffalo Wing Kings. At Wing Kings, it's Wings 101. With over 101 different flavors and their beloved Wing of the Month special, Wing Kings is sure to school any other place around. Available for Bills games, parties, graduations, or just any other day you're craving some wings, hit up Wing King. Stop by their Elmwood Village location at 484 Elmwood Avenue, or give them a call at 716-248-1427 and find out why they say, and we know, they have the best wings in town, hands down. And also, mention our name, Overdue Bills Podcast, when you go there and get 10% off your order.
Absolutely. And definitely we have to do a little bit of housekeeping. OverdueBillsPod.com. OverdueBillsPod.com. That's a website. You see the merch that we have, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, whatever you need. It's definitely getting cold. It's raining outside here in the great city of Buffalo, I should say. And so please go on OverdueBillsPod.com for all your t-shirts, hoodies, whatever you need. And shout out to our guy, Mike Daniels, who is our editor-in-chief over there at the website. He has a great article. So please go check that out. All right. With that being said, quick question of the day. And I guess I want to go a little bit lighthearted. And Blake said that, he was a fan of the Tennessee Titans since the 90s. So obviously this was under his peer review. You know where I'm going. I believe it's 2001, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I just have to ask this question to Blake to see where he's going to go with this. Forward lateral or regular lateral? It was a forward lateral.
Definitely not a forward lateral.
Oh my goodness.
It's not. And I love that technology has come so long, and where we used to have just little grainy videos here and there to look at, they have actually uploaded that entire game on YouTube that you can watch anytime.
Wow.
And there's one clip, I mean, it's very questionable, and seeing it to start with, absolutely, it looks like no way because you're looking at the bodies. But there's one angle that they only show one time, which kills me because it's the best angle that they have, but it's a shot from the sideline, literally looking down the line. And you just look at the amount of grass between the football and that line. And as it's crossing the field, you're seeing less and less grass, less and less green between it. So that sealed it for me.
Well, Matt, how you feel about that?
Well, you know what I'm going to answer. It was definitely a quarter that. I was a young kid then. I'm pretty sure I learned some new swear words that day from watching it with everybody around me. So yeah, it was definitely a forward lateral in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. Frank Wycheck and Derek Mason definitely cooked up some things in there. Must talk to the refs or somebody. But I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that. But just wanted to get something lighthearted before we really get into the show. And I wanted to ask Blake, because going into this season, I guess one of the big revelations in the past couple of years is Ryan Tannehill. Right? Ryan Tannehill coming from the Miami Dolphins under the terrible thumb of Adam Gase, who is considered probably one of the worst coaches in NFL history. But obviously Ryan Tannehill turned over a new leaf, right? He becomes this crazy efficient quarterback. He's throwing dimes. He's running the ball. He's making things happen. He's beating Baltimore in playoff games. It's just crazy. But not so much this year, right? He still has some efficiency things that we see, but he's just not necessarily what we've been seeing or what we were privy to in these last couple of seasons. How do the Tennessee fans feel, and how do you feel about Ryan's Tannehill play this season?
So it's a little polarizing because you look on the surface, and we're numbers guys. I mean, you look at the numbers and you see how it bears it out, but then you look at the game situation and you see that there have been injuries all along the offensive line this year. It doesn't matter if you've got Peyton Manning back there. It doesn't matter if you've got Joe Montana back there. It doesn't matter if you got Ryan Tannehill back there. If you don't have time to make a play, you're going to have a bad time. Right. Taylor Lewan coming off a catastrophic knee injury last year. He's back, but we know that it takes months and months and months to get back to 100%. Roger Saffold battling injuries every week. Just go back and watch any game this year, and you will see Roger Saffold lying on the ground at some point during the game. He's nursing a shoulder currently, among other things. And then you have a lack of depth. I mean, you had the well-publicized Isaiah Wilson fiasco last year. He was going to be the answer to our offensive line problem. Only played a couple special team snaps and, washed out, got traded to Miami and immediately cut. And then you're having to count on guys like David Quisenberry and Kendall Lamb not having any level of experience. The thing that's talked about more than anything here right now, I believe, along the offensive line is the fact that they've had the opportunity multiple times to fix it through the draft. And you whiffed on Isaiah Wilson last year. And then this year you draft Dylan Raduns from North Dakota State. Granted, looks good on paper, but didn't play the season prior to the draft, opted out of the season, but he's barely seen the field so far. So is he the guy? Is he not? I feel like we're going to know sooner than later, because if you haven't seen this week, one of the swing tackles, Ty Sambrailo, suddenly announced retirement this week. And he was one of the backup guys that you were kind of rotating in and out. When Lewan went down earlier this season, Sambrailo stepped in and did a serviceable job. So I think Tannehill gets a bad rap where it's more of the offensive line play. According to Pro Football Focus, when Tannehill has a clean pocket this season, he has a quarterback rating, or passer grade of 96, which is the highest in the league, better than any quarterback with a clean pocket. But when he's under pressure, that drops down to 51, which is bottom 10 in the league. So he's not perfect. And of course, he tends to hold the ball a little bit too long sometimes, but I think you've got to give the guy a chance to make plays downfield.
Absolutely. And just really a quick follow-up before we kind of get into the matchups. I'm glad you talked about that pressure piece with Tannehill because I'm going to go to Matt in a couple seconds. But do you think that with the loss of Arthur Smith, who was considered, I guess, a guru, you know what I mean? Like this idea of ground and pound. Obviously, the league is kind of shifting to a more pass-heavy league, but it seems like Tennessee was just like, okay, no, we're just going to run the ball 30 times. And Arthur Smith being this great coach, not necessarily doing so well in Atlanta, but that, that's neither here nor there. Do you think the loss of Arthur Smith to a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill is kind of somewhat hurting him, or is it just like personnel as far as the offensive line is concerned?
The funny thing is you see how things are going in Nashville so far this year, and you see how things are going in Atlanta. And I think both teams would agree to a trade for Arthur Smith based on how it's going. You have Todd Downing as the new offensive coordinator coming up through the system, and he has definitely struggled so far. And it's really baffling with all the weapons that he has on the roster.
Right.
I know you guys will appreciate this, but I found myself more than once scanning the sideline, making sure I don't see Adam Gase down there somewhere, doing something, to have some cause in this. So you have your last two offensive coordinators, Arthur Smith and of course Matt LaFleur, who moved on to host to coach the Green Bay Packers now. You have a roster that, granted, has changed a little bit with the loss of some key players, but it was pretty close to the one you got now.
Right.
But Downing seems to have been really conservative in his play calling so far, and we're not exactly sure why. I mean, is it due to injuries? Because you've had both Julio and AJ fighting, hamstring issues. Is he acclimating to the role? I mean, at this point, you're fortunate to be in the AFC South because of how terrible the rest of the division has been. But eventually, you're going to have to put your foot on the gas at some point.
Absolutely. It's definitely interesting. I guess it remains to be seen. It's kind of we kind of get to like what the fifth, sixth game of the season is like, okay, the world is ending, but it's definitely a long season. It's kind of like a wait and see. But with that being said, I think it's important to kind of speak about the injuries and the injury report. And I'm going to go to Matt to kind of deal with the Buffalo Bills injury report. We know that last week Matt Milano did not play, who was a huge reason for our defense being great. And since we are playing one of probably the best running back in football, as far as the numbers is concerned, he is the best. Who sort of embarrassed us last year. I'm not going to really talk about that. But Matt, can you talk about the injury report for the Bills?
Yeah, so the injury report is looking pretty good. Matt Milano practiced yesterday and today, and I watched a couple of videos of him doing drills, and he didn't look like he was missing any steps. So right now we're kind of in a good spot where there's nobody on the injury report. There's one, Saran Neal had a non-COVID illness day off today, so he might be a little sick, but that was the only one. There's a couple other veteran rest days and stuff like that, but nobody is looking like the forecast is looking like nobody's going to be out on Monday.
Wonderful.
Monday also helps because, we got an extra day which also I'm sure you're going to get to next can probably help the Titans.
Absolutely. Because when you look at that injury list, Blake, is like, okay, this is a lot going on right here. So Blake, if you can you kind of break this down? Because we know like Julio Jones and AJ Brown obviously did not play DMPs. Clearly that was an issue against the Jaguars. So can you kind of talk about this long list of people on this injury report?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a next man up situation. Wow. You're having guys like Chester Rogers, running a bunch of routes. So it's like, didn't think I'd see that to start the season.
Great.
But it's hamstring. It just seems like so many hamstring injuries around the roster. But the good news is, if you're on the Titans side, is that both AJ and Julio have put in full practices the second half of the week. So both of them look good to go. I think the interesting thing that was mentioned during the week is that last week it was revealed that AJ had been on a snap count during the last game. And they were asking him about that today after the Friday practice. And he was kind of coy about it. And of course, Mike Vrabel, he wants to be Bill Belichick so bad he can't stand it. He does not want to share any information about anything ever. So, they were being a little coy about it, but all the indications are is that AJ and Julio may be on the field at a full go this weekend, which is good news. But on the bad news, you have Christian Fulton, who has been the most consistent corner for the Titans so far this year. He's been out of practice the last 2 days with a hamstring. So, this may be the first long look you get at Caleb Farley, who they drafted to kind of step in that secondary role to see kind of what happens there. Bud Dupree did not practice today, still with the knee issue. Saffold was back, but he was limited, as was Taylor Lewan putting in a full practice today. But I think the big news on our side is both AJ and Julio were putting in a full practice. So, I mean, I think if you're going to really try to stretch the field and open things up for the running game, the running game opens up the pass and vice versa. Having both of them out there, I think, is really important. And I think, regardless of what side you're on, I think Monday Night Football, under the lights, two storied franchises like these, you want to see the good guys out there and see what happens.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you talked about them because I definitely want to get into the game, right? I want to deal with these matchups, like the schemes that we're going to run. And I guess I do want to start with the right receivers, Julio Jones, and AJ Brown. And I want to go to Matt first because we know we have a all-pro top 5, cornerback in Tre'Davious White. I'll remind everybody, he did not play last year against the Tennessee Titans when we got, lambasted. But anyways, also they have, they do have Julio Jones on the other side, right? Yeah. And Matt, so can you talk about, our secondary and having those safeties and actually showing what we did against a Kansas City Chief offense who is very, very, very high power? Do you think we're ready to handle this ground and pound, play action type of team in the Tennessee Titans? Do you think this, our defense is up for the task?
Well, that's a huge thing with Derrick Henry. We got away pretty much all game last week, only rushing 4. We're not going to be able to just do that today. We're going to have to put a couple extra guys in the box to support with Derrick Henry because he's just a little bit too unstoppable to try to get away with, only rushing 4 and not having a guy down there. So that's definitely going to take a big toll on it. But our defensive linemen, they do really well with winning up front. I think Jerry Hughes and Greg Rousseau, they have a consistent over 22% win rate up front. And I know I prefaced it a couple of weeks ago. Aaron Donald averaged like 21.5 last season. So if they're winning their matchups one-on-one like that, on run and pass downs, then it's a very good sign for them to be able to kind of slow Derrick Henry down and help in the pass game or help on those play action plays because they can kind of disrupt things.
I'm definitely glad you went that way because I want to shoot it right to Blake because I know a lot. I was at work today and a lot of people were, talking about kind of over-unders and player specials, so to speak, on the betting tip. And obviously Derrick Henry, and I guess we can just skip the over-under, but I think they have his over-under at 100 yards. And everybody's like, oh, slam it. But when you look at the history of it, Derrick Henry is actually, I think he's averaging like 67 yards against the Buffalo Bills, if I'm not mistaken, in the few last previous games. And last year, he only had, I think, 75 yards, if I'm not mistaken. 75 or 78 yards. I can't remember. I think it was 75 yards.
57.
Well, it was 57. Oh, it was 57 yards, yes.
Yeah, so I got the exact what he had the last 3 years in our matchups. He didn't rush for 100 in any of the contests. That's right. Had 56 in 2018. He had 78 in 2019, and then 57 last year, like Blake said.
Right. And on double-digit carries, like high double-digit carries. So Blake, do you think that that's still going to be a recipe for you, like this game? Are you just gonna hand the ball off to Derrick Henry? Or is it more that you're going to rely on Ryan Tannehill?
I think both sides of the offense feed into each other. While Derrick Henry has always, been lucky enough to have offensive weapons down the field to kind of open up the center of the field, he's never really been in a situation, and I think it's going to come down to depth at the end of the day. Is A.J. Brown 100%? Is Julio Jones 100%? If they are and are full go and are you just running down the field creating chaos, you can't continue to stack the box. They're just going to beat you down the field. So I don't think they're going to get away from the run. I mean, that's just priority one on their identity. I think the interesting thing to see coming into this matchup, because the Bills historically have done a really good job of shutting him down. 57 yards last year. He did get 2 touchdowns, but they were short yardage situations. But Derrick Henry is off to the hottest start of his career so far this season. I mean, he's 510 yards so far. If we just go with the after contact yards, it's 365 yards, which is still ahead of number 2, Nick Chubb. Yep. So, I mean, he's running and this is before he even quote unquote gets good at the end of the season.
Right.
When as we lovingly call it, the Henber rolls around and it gets cold and nobody wants to tackle him and he just runs folks over. So, on pace to have his best season yet. So, I think it's going to come down to depth, whether or not those downfield weapons truly are 100%, because I think you just kind of have to pick your poison. Do you stack the box and dare A.J. Brown and Julio Jones to beat you? Or, do you go after them and just, I think you've got to, I think priority one for the Bills is, I mean, if you want to have the best chance of winning this game, I think you've got to take the run away. I just think what it comes down to.
Right. And I guess a lot of talk has been, right, the best run defense is a solid offense. And much has been said about the Bills offense, right? We can put up points in bunches. And so I guess I'll shoot this right back to you, Blake. Do you think that it's going to be very difficult for the Tennessee Titans to run the ball? Because, it's not like the Tennessee Titans has this amazing defense, and so the Bills are.
Definitely not.
Right. So we're going to put up points. So it's like at some point, if we're scoring touchdowns and then you are just like running the ball, like eventually you're gonna have to say, okay, we got to let the wheels out. How do you feel about that? What do you say to that?
You would think that, but if there's a team that
That's true.
leans on their running back, it would be this Tennessee Titans team. Because if you've looked at some of the stats this year, Derrick Henry has suddenly become a pass catching back for the first time in his career.
Right.
I mean, he's already caught more passes this year than I think he has in any season prior. And, we're not even halfway through the year. So, I mean, there are creative ways you can find to continue to work him into the offense. But I think you're right. I mean, when you're a team that puts up points like that, eventually you're going to have to try to, come up with a different way to match pace. But the question is can Buffalo take advantage of that and do that? The matchups I'm really looking at, other than the one we've already named, 2 full-strength wide receivers against that Bills secondary, I think Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry going against the Bills front, because the Titans really haven't done a good job this year so far of putting pressure on the quarterback. And if you let Josh Allen stand back there and pick you apart, that's not good. And then the added thing is that he's not afraid to take off either. So, I mean, if you do get pressure and you force him outside, are you going to have people watching those lanes? Do you have a quarterback spy? What are you going to do to make sure that he doesn't beat you with his legs?
You got some? Yeah, you can respond, Matt.
Well, yeah, I mean that's obviously it's so tough with our with our receiving core, and now we have a serviceable tight end in Dawson Knox, whose emergence has just been way head and shoulders above our expectations, right?
Full disclosure, he is on my fantasy team.
Me too.
hey, he's from Nashville too, so it's he's a Tennessee boy, but yeah, he with those guys, it's gonna be interesting to see what the defensive coaches for Tennessee draw up to be able to contain something like that, because they don't have the luxury of being able to just go man to man, or they have to go man to man across the board, and they kind of can't spare people to watch Josh Allen. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
So Matt, Blake talked about Ryan Tannehill's issue with pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the front four, being, I guess we did a really good job, obviously, against Kansas City, but that was a specific game, right? That's in like a vacuum in the context. Like we're not going to play like that with everybody, because everybody doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, la-di-da-di-da-di, right? So with the Tennessee Titans, do you think we're going to blitz a little bit more to try to like manufacture more pressure, or do you think we're just going to have front four, Star, Rousseau, just, all right, pin your ears back and just try to get them? How do you think we're going to approach this game?
I do think they're going to blitz a lot more, especially with Milano. Milano's the kind of guy, he's flying. They kind of just put him in a Clay Matthews role and they just let him go rogue sometimes, especially when Tremaine Edmonds is healthy. So I definitely do think they're going to blitz a lot more. And also just, Ryan Tannehill, it must've been an Adam Gase thing, because we used to love playing against Ryan Tannehill when he was in Miami. That was like our, he was more or less our son. So he got his revenge game off on us last year. But yeah, I definitely think we are going to blitz a lot more this game.
Definitely will be interesting to see. I know we, in the beginning of the season, we were definitely sending Tre'Davious White, Teron Johnson on those, cornerback blitzes. I think we're going to manufacture some pressure for that for Ryan Tannehill, just to try to get some turnovers. But, it remains to be seen. And on the idea of pressure, I know you talked about, your defensive line, but Harold Landry, leading, a pass rusher in your defense, do you think that that's someone who can probably get home?
He stepped up a little bit more in the past few weeks. Okay. I know he was kind of MIA early, but he has done a better job. Now, what you don't want to do, they ran a goal line scheme last week where they dropped him into coverage, and that is not a situation you want to be in. And he was beaten very badly for a touchdown. So I think he is one of them to definitely watch. Another name to look out for, Amani Hooker, had stepped in at safety and had been doing a great job and has been injured most of the season. He is actually on the eligible to return list. They'll probably make a decision sometime this weekend. But if you get Hooker back out there, along with Farley, getting a better look at him, it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do.
I'm glad it's so exciting hearing these names, because I really want to do our expectation versus reality segment, and I'm going to switch it. I'm going to switch it a little bit. But before we do that, Matt, can you please let the people know who our expectation versus reality sponsor is?
Yes, sir. This segment is brought to you by Buffalo Pet Supply. Do you have a pet? Are you looking into getting a pet? Or do you know somebody who has a pet? There's only one place to send them to make that pet live its best life. Buffalo Pet Supply, specializing in fish, small animals, and reptiles. The knowledgeable staff at Buffalo Pet Supply can get you set up or maintain whatever setup you have. Stop down and see the family-owned and operated staff over at 1345 Military Road in Kenmore, or give them a call at 716-874-1951. And same as the Wing Kings, you stop in there, mention our name, you get 10% off your purchase.
Absolutely. Shout out to Buffalo Pet Supply, where your expectation is their reality. All right, so let's do this. I kind of want to do we haven't done this in a while. But I want you, Blake, to tell the Buffalo Bills community, right? If you can tell us all, or the Overdue Bills community, I should say, one player who we really don't know, right? You know this reality of this player, right? He's a good player for the Tennessee Titans. All the fans, you know what I mean? He's a fan favorite. He does the dirty work, so to speak. But we don't necessarily know him. And can you give us a little bit of expectation of that player that, you know, everybody may not hear his name all the time, but he's actually very, very valuable to your team?
Gosh, that's a really good one because we've had so many injuries and so many people stepping in. I think I've named a couple of them.
You did.
Amani Hooker would be a good candidate. I know Kevin Byard is the big name out there, but Kevin Byard, the past couple of seasons, hasn't been what we've expected him to be. It just seems like he's kind of lost a step, and Amani Hooker really kind of put some life in that defense. I think Harold Landry as another one you named. A lot of people really have not heard much about him, but he's consistently getting pressures each game.
Okay.
So those are the two probably non-obvious names. Quisenberry on the right side of the line has really stepped up where there's been a bit of a vacuum, you know, letting some people walk in the offseason. Dennis Kelly, the big name they let go in the offseason that really was a big head scratcher because he had been very serviceable in the role. But Quisenberry, you know, started the year very badly, but looks like here the past couple of weeks, I think he was one of the top rated in the position this last week.
Interesting. All right, we're definitely going to look out for those names. Come Monday, Bills Nation, you know what I mean? Let's just keep your ears open. Maybe you'll hear their name. Maybe you won't. We'll see. But, Matt, if you can, let the Tennessee people know, can you give them a name, right? Somebody that, you know, it's not necessarily talked about in the limelight too much, but it's somebody that we know as Bills fans, like, okay, this is the guy. He actually gets the engine going.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with on the offensive side. I know they have so many, but Isaiah Mckenzie. You know, he kind of is a household name here, but you don't hear too much about him, I guess, in other circles. But he does a lot of things on offense, whether it be, you know, take a lot of defense. Like there was a play on one of our touchdown, Josh Allen rushing touchdown last week where he did like a jet sweep. And he brought like 3 defenders with him because Dable set it up and set the blocking scheme up perfectly, so he would draw a lot more attention. So little things like that, and he's so dependent. He's been killing it in the run game since the return game since the Andre Roberts departure. So Isaiah Mckenzie for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna go. I'm sure maybe people have heard of him, but Star Latulele, yeah, he's a cog in the middle, and we did not have him last year. That was one of the biggest issues with our run defense. We just didn't have anybody to take up blocks. Ed Oliver wasn't necessarily big enough to do it. He wasn't ready to take on that role. But Star, he's huge. He's having a great season, and you know, we're excited. So I know that's a name we'll hear. Hopefully, he can get a sack too. We'll see. And let me just answer this to Lou. He's on YouTube. He sent a comment. He says, "Yo, does Derrick Henry go over and above 100 yards?" We did answer that at the beginning of the show, but Blake, I'll let you answer that for Lou. He actually he went to our high school, so that's the only reason I'm giving him a shout out. But if you can't answer that,
respect, man. You gotta be true to your roots,
right?
You know, I know that he's had a few games in a row, but to me, that just means he's due. You know, he's off to the hottest start ever. He's averaging over 100 yards a game. I know the Bills bring a lot to the table, but if there was ever an opportunity for that passing game to open it up, this might be the time. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes.
Okay. Matt, over under Derrick Henry 100 yards.
You know what? I'm gonna stick with the defensive coaches schemes. I'm gonna go under again. I'm gonna go bold. You know, it's tough to say that against somebody like Derrick Henry, who's almost a guaranteed 100. But yeah, I'm gonna go under, man.
I'm gonna go under 2. I think he's gonna get it right around like 89 yards. About 21 carries, 89 yards around there. It's interesting because I honestly think our offense is just gonna be very, very explosive this game. And with that being said, I'll ask you, Matt, Josh Allen over under 301 passing yards.
I'm gonna go with over, man. He looked the best he looked in his entire career last year, and we're kind of on the revenge circuit. So you know he was there last year with that just absolute whooping, and you know he posted on his Instagram page the whole Nick Wright rant with highlights of the game. So he doesn't forget. As much as he'd like to talk about in his interviews that he's not worried about last year, he doesn't forget. So I think he's gonna come out lights out and go over.
Blake, care to answer?
I'm going to go over as well.
Wow.
Young secondary, still trying to mesh, still trying to figure out what the best combination of players is out there. And the ones who have been the ones we've been counting on, at least so far this year, are dealing with injury. So I would not be surprised at all to see him go over that number.
That's interesting because I definitely have a question about Ryan Tannehill. I do have him on my fantasy, and I have been very, very underwhelmed. Primarily because he's just not throwing the ball enough in these games. So I'll ask you this, Ryan Tannehill, over under 46 passing attempts.
Oh, I thought you were going to say passing yards.
Oh, no. 46 passing
attempts.
attempts.
Bad, but my God, man.
No.
No, 46 passing attempts. I still say under.
Wow.
I think that I don't think they're going to take that many touches away from Derrick Henry. And while I understand that he's going to have to throw the ball more than he typically would, 46 just seems a little high for me.
It is high. I guess we're going to ask each other about the prediction of the game to see where we kind of land on it. But I don't know. I'll ask you, Matt, do you think he's going to have to throw the ball? Over under.
I think he's gonna have to throw the ball, but I think just with how well our defense is playing, I don't think he's gonna have that many possessions to be able to throw 46 times. That's why I think it's gonna go under myself.
Okay, so let me ask you this: for the Bills running backs, I'm not gonna tell Moss and Singletary, Devin Singletary and Moss, over under 96 yards rushing, just total, just those two running backs. Matt.
Zach Moss and Singletary. I'm gonna say, our rushing attack has been good, but Josh Allen has been taking up a lot of those yards. So I'm gonna go under for both of those two.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Blake, do you think we're gonna be able to run on y'all, or?
They have had a tendency to give up chunk plays on the ground and not even anything flashy, not anything to the sides of the field, just straight up the gap. It wouldn't surprise me. I would actually lean over on that. Interesting.
I think so too. I think we're gonna get some chunk plays. I know James Robinson definitely did, and obviously I'm not saying that they're James Robinson, but I think they're pretty good. So let me go to the receivers of Tennessee. I think that's what everybody wants to know. I'm getting a lot of questions in the chat. So, and I guess Julio is playing, just for clarity. I mean, he's a full go.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go Julio Jones. Julio Jones over under 67 passing or receiving yards, I should say. Blake.
I'm going to go over simply because A.J. Brown is still being coy about whether or not he's on a snap count. I just think that Julio may be out there more than A.J. It wouldn't surprise me to see him outgain A.J. simply because of the share of the snaps.
Okay.
Ideally, they would be out there both the full time. But again, Vrabel, when they asked him the question, even though he didn't give an answer, you could tell by looking at his face that it sure feels like they're trying to kind of gear up for the stretch run, especially since they're in a position, within the division, they have a cushion where they can actually be like, okay, we don't necessarily have to run the table. We just have to be good enough to make it out of this division.
Absolutely.
I know we've become the new NFC East.
Right.
Awesome. I could see, I'm going to go over. I mean, if he's full strength, I say he goes over.
Interesting. So, Matt, with that being said, do you think Levi Wallace and Tre'Davious White can kind of hold A.J. Brown and Julio down?
I do, only because they have the luxury and support of two, in my opinion, should be all pro safeties. Jordan Poyer doesn't get a whole lot of love, but he does so much in pass support and run support. And then you got Micah Hyde on the other side, who I believe is in second overall for interceptions this year with 4. So I think with those guys over the top and Teron Johnson kind of in support too, I think they're going to be up to the task.
Okay, so before we give the prediction of the game and kind of get into that, I want to know, since you said that, Blake, do you think that Ryan Tannehill is going to throw an interception this game? I guess I should say over under 0.5 interceptions.
It's a good question. I think it's going to come down to you. We were talking about the blitzing earlier because the Bills, just based on what I've seen, the Bills don't seem to be a team that just goes out there and blitzes all the time. Like, it seems like it's not their bread and butter, but I think they would be silly to not. I mean, gosh, the tape is out there. Yeah. And you'd be silly to not put pressure on Ryan Tannehill and try to get to him, because those are the situations when he tends to make those mistakes, as far as, holding onto the ball too long, forcing a throw. With the defense of the caliber of the Bills, it would not surprise me to see at least one.
Matt, you feel we're going to turn them over?
Yeah, I mean, we're leading the NFL in takeaways by a pretty big margin. I think we're plus 11. So it's, and then they added a new element into interceptions last week with the Greg Rousseau, JJ Watt-esque, put your hands up, block this little sidearm pass and intercept it. So that's I think we're going to get at least one, I think.
I think it's definitely it's going to be an interesting game, because one of the biggest things, I think the Bills have a coaching advantage. I don't know, Mike Vrabel. I think the mystique is kind of wearing off. Not to say that he's not a good coach, but it's just like, all right, guy, like, you're not. I mean, I'm just saying, like, when he got there, it was like, oh my God. I mean, he had huge playoff wins, like really, really big playoff wins, and it's like it was this mystique around him. But now when you look at him, it's like, okay, I don't know if you're coming back down to reality, but how does the Tennessee fans feel about Vrabel? Like, is it like still this, we still got a great coach, or is it like kind of side eye?
It is really polarizing. Okay. I would say more people than not are questioning, because as bad as the defense was last year, he refused to name a defensive coordinator the entire season last year, and the defense was awful. And then he came out after the season and tried to tell us that Shane Bowen was calling the plays the whole time, not him, because he led us all to believe that he was calling the plays. And then after the season was not great, he's like, oh no, Shane Bowen was doing that. Oh yeah, by the way, we are making him the defensive coordinator going forward. So wait a minute. The guy who was calling the plays last year, who did not do a good job that you say was calling the plays, you're now making him the permanent guy.
Interesting.
So and I think kind of the Vrabel attitude during the press conferences kind of rubs people the wrong way, as far as like, I'm not going to share any information. I'm going to be Bill Belichick Jr. And, I'm going to be, the stoic guy who doesn't share anything. I know that a lot of people are very defensive of their coaches, and he's done good things. Like you said, some huge wins, some really ballsy play calling along the way, as far as like going for it instead of kicking field goals and stuff like that. And those things have been great. But sometimes the phrase we use is he's too cute. He gets a little too cute with what he has available to him. It's like sometimes the right answer is the one that's right in front of your face the whole time.
Absolutely. Hopefully it's not a Doug Peterson, Frank Wright situation, but it remains to be seen, right? It remains to be seen, because Arthur Smith is not doing good, but I guess Frank Wright is not doing good either. Who knows? So let's get to this prediction of the game, right? Monday Night Football, prime time for the world to see. It's actually been some very entertaining Monday night games, so hopefully this doesn't disappoint us. So Matt, if you can, give me your prediction of the game.
Yeah, I think we're going to stay right on pace with our 34 points a game. I'm going to go 34-13.
Oh my
Bills.
God.
Yeah. I mean, it's looking at it, like it's a quote unquote revenge game. I think McDermott, you saw how focused he looked last week. I'm pretty sure he circled this one on his calendar from the slacking last week and everything he took, all the words that were said about how coached he got in this game with all the players on COVID and everything like that. So he definitely didn't forget either. So I'm gonna go with, he's gonna have the guys ready to go, and it'll be a lopsided affair.
Blake, can I get your prediction?
I keep saying when I do these things, I need to go like Lee Corso and have like a headgear off to the side or something. One of these days I'm actually going to do it. And it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. Monday Night Football under the lights. I mean, when we saw the schedule announced and saw that these were the two teams that were going to be playing under the lights in Nashville, I mean, who doesn't want to see that?
Right.
Two playoff teams, two-story franchises, long history with each other, good and bad for both sides. I feel like if I don't pick my team, they're not going to let me go to the games anymore, man. So, while on paper it looks like it's going to be a blowout one way or the, that way, I'm going to say it's going to be to go Corso. It's going to be closer than the experts think. I'm going to go, fat Randy Bullock comes out with a late field goal. The Titans win 27-24.
27-24. Interesting. I mean, that.
Right.
Listen. I mean, it's Monday night, under the lights. Who knows? You know what I mean? But I will say this. I do think the NFL selection committee, as far as the games is concerned, because I think they did the Bills a favor. In theory, this would be a letdown spot, right? Because, I mean, a lot of people say, like, the Kansas City Chiefs was our Super Bowl, right? They embarrassed us in the AFC Championship game last year. We shellacked them. We beat them in Kansas City. Like, it was amazing. We're on a high right now in Buffalo. But the great thing about it is we can focus, like Matt said, because the Tennessee Titans embarrassed us last year. Like, we were embarrassed. Derrick Henry, Josh Norman throwing him to the ground. That's all you've seen on Facebook and Twitter this week. Like, that's the only thing that they show. Derrick, even though he had 57 yards, he didn't really do much. That play is so significant to last year. That's all we see. Well, that
56 of those yards was how far he threw Josh Norman.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It was.
he did score twice, though. I'll give him that. He scored twice in short yard, but still. Yes.
It was embarrassing. It was a COVID game. I mean, it was all. It was a mess. Tennessee Titans almost killed the season last year, but that's neither here nor there. But seriously, I think it was so great because I was telling my friend, I said, we have to focus. Like, we need this game. This game is ours. Like, these two away games were put here specifically so we can see what we're made of. And we took care of the Chiefs, and I think we're going to take care of the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to say this, and I said it last week, and I was close. I'm still going on my 42-24. 42-24. I think we're going to score, man. The Jaguars put up, like, I mean, it was just like, come on, y'all. So, I mean, like, it's no way the Buffalo Bills can't put up points. Like, we have to be able to put up points.
Yeah.
And I think that we're just, like, at this point, we're just a better team. And so I can see 42-24. Shout out to Lou. He said 31-20. That might be where it's really at. But, 42-24. I think it's going to be some scores in this game. Definitely load up all your fantasy players. Just throw them all in there. I don't know who's gonna score, but I think just throw them all. I think it's gonna be one of those games. But Blake, do you have anything else to say about the game?
I don't think so, man. I'm just looking forward to it, man. Anytime your team is playing on Monday Night Football, you're doing something right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're definitely excited. And Matt, can you please let the people know about the contest that we're having?
Yeah, so the contest, it's a good thing we ended on the prediction. Our contest is the same every week. Predict the score, like our page or follow our page. It's open to Instagram and Facebook. Predict the score, and then as a tiebreaker, put in the total offensive yards you think the Buffalo Bills will have. We still haven't had anybody pick the correct score. I know if you pick the correct score spot on, we're gonna match your $30 gift card that you get for winning this contest. And if nobody wins, or if we have multiple correct submissions, the tiebreaker is going to be the closest to the total yardage, like we do every week. Then you have to share that post that's up on our Facebook and on our Instagram page. You can get in now up until 8 p.m. on Monday night.
Absolutely. We're definitely excited for all of you to be on. We wanted to have an action-packed show, and it was. Blake definitely showed up and showed out. We definitely appreciate your time. Thank you, Matt. And to all of our Overdue Bills fans, please, overduebillspod.com. Overduebillspod.com. Please visit the website. Look at the articles we have. And
Mike posted one this morning, so
absolutely. Mike put one up. So shout out to our editor-in-chief. He's definitely working hard and tirelessly. And also, we know that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you can go on our Facebook and Instagram page. We have our survivors up there. Matt, can you let the people know who our survivors was, or this week?
Well, this week was Rochelle Malone. We got a couple other nominations that we'll spotlight on our recap show, I believe Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we have it. So we have a couple more in pocket. So definitely be looking out for that. And then all of our purchases we have for all of our breast cancer awareness gear, we're going to donate 10% to Roswell Park Cancer Foundation. So definitely look into that, or looking to try to support or keep nominating people, because we want to give some stuff away to those people. So keep those coming in.
Absolutely. Shout out to all of you out there. And we're definitely going to end the show, but we end every show with a little bit of hey, 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 hey.
Hey,